Since we're talking about couples, let's talk about one of the most infamous couples in U.S. history, John and Lorena Bobbitt. This all starts on June 23rd, 1993, when Lorena Bobbitt grabbed a kitchen knife and cut off her husband's penis. She then took the severed body part and then drove away from their home in Manassas, Virginia. Almost immediately, the media latched onto this case and it became a laughingstock. It made the rounds on SNL. Almost every comedian referenced it that year. They mocked the police officers who had to hunt for his severed appendage in the field. They mocked the surgeon who reattached it. They mocked John and said that he was bad at sex, which is why he'd been attacked. They mocked Lorena and called her a feisty Latina, very racist, who just couldn't hold on to her anger as her relationship was falling apart. In reality, though, there was a lot more to this story than a simple punchline. But let's talk about Lorena. She was born in 1969 as Lorena Gallo, and she was raised in Caracas, Venezuela. She had a really happy childhood, and when she was 15 years old, her parents, as a present for her quinceañera, brought her a trip to the United States. When she came back, she was just like, wow, this is the best place. I really want to grow up and live there. And originally, her parents tried to emigrate to the U.S., but they were denied. And then in 1987, Lorena was able to get a student visa. While going to school, she studied English, worked as a nail technician, and pretty much had a great time. Lorena met John in 1988 in Stafford, Virginia, and for the both of them, it was an intense connection. Lorena said that he was very handsome, dark hair, blue eyes, a man in uniform. She saw him as her American dream. John was born in Niagara Falls, and he did not have a good childhood. In fact, when he was 3 years old, his single mom had a mental breakdown, and she actually gave her children to an aunt and uncle to raise them. Now, that aunt and uncle had 4 boys already, and so they went from being a family of 6 to a family of 9 very quickly. John actually described the family as a lot of love and a lot of fighting, and the very young John ended up being the peacemaker in the household. When John was of age, he enlisted in the Marines, and that's when he met Lorena at an officer's ball. The two actually got married less than a year into dating, and later on John would say that he felt pressured, not just from Lorena's family, but also because he knew that her visa was expiring soon and he didn't want to have to break up. So rather than have her go back to Venezuela, he decided to just suck it up and propose, which was pretty much the start to their very toxic 4-year relationship. Lorena said that from the start, it was bad. Even on their first night as a married couple, she said he was very rough with her during intimacy and she didn't want to do it anymore. Later on, when she would start to decline his advances, she said that he would physically hit her and also essay her to make her do what he wanted. When she got pregnant from one of those assaults, he bullied her to have an abortion, and he continued to bully her up to the day of the appointment to make sure she didn't back out. That was just behind their bedroom door, but even as a regular couple, things weren't working. John acted as if he wasn't in a marriage, and he would just unilaterally make decisions for the couple without consulting his wife. On top of that, John had been discharged from the Marines in 1991, and he had a very hard time keeping a job, and he became more erratic. Lorena was actually so stressed from the finances and him unable to keep a job that she ended up stealing $7,200 from her boss, who amazingly understood that she was going through something and didn't have her prosecuted for embezzlement. Lorena's attorney, Blair Howard, would later go on to say to ABC News that Lorena was the meal ticket and she was the punching bag. Now, John and Lorena break up in October of 1991, and then they get back together less than a year later, which brings us to June 23rd, 1993. They have been back together for less than a year. Now, what Lorena would tell the police is that by June 23rd, they were separated again, living in completely different rooms in their house. She said that they had agreed to be together on paper, but they were just going to live 2 separate lives. But that on June 22nd, John had gone out with his buddies and gotten completely hammered. He came back and he broke into Lorena's room and he brutally physically assaulted her. Lorena only weighed 95 pounds at this time, and she said that he just was on top of her and it was too much. She couldn't scream, she couldn't breathe, she couldn't move. After the assault, John went back to his room and passed out, and Lorena went down to the kitchen and got a drink of water, and she said something just broke inside of her. She said that she sat there and she just started thinking about the first time he hit her, the first time he essayed her. So many things went through her mind so quickly, and she just wanted him to disappear. She wanted him to leave her alone, and she didn't want to see him ever again. And then she saw the knife, she picked it up, and she just did it. After the attack, John stumbled around the house bleeding, trying to get help. Lorena just ran. And she didn't even realize she was still holding the severed body part until she went to make a turn and she realized it was still in her hand. She screamed and she just threw it out the window. John called a friend who took him straight to the hospital, and Lorena ended up driving to her boss's house, who saw her covered in blood and clearly upset, and called the police too. When the police got there, she just said, "I cut it off, and it's across the street from the 7-Eleven in a big grassy field." The police very quickly recovered his member, and they got some ice from the 7-Eleven and took it to the hospital in an empty Big Bite hot dog box. The surgeon who would go on to successfully reattach the penis was called around 4 a.m., and it took him 9.5 hours to successfully complete the operation. By the time that surgery was over, John and Lorena Bobbitt were household names. I was only 7 years old, and I remember this case. One of the interesting details about this case was that not only was Lorena arrested, but so was John. Lorena was charged with malicious wounding, and John was charged with marital essay, something that the media latched onto and pretty much made a mockery of, with some news outlets saying, "Wow, is that even possible? It's like an oxymoron, marital essay." It's very interesting how both trials were handled, because John's trial was in 1993, there were no cameras, and he was very quietly acquitted. Afterward, Howard Stern said, "I don't even buy that he was essaying her. She's not even that great looking." On the flip side, Lorena's case was a complete spectacle. We are talking 24-hour news cycle. Late at night, they are doing highlights of the court case in local news. Honestly, one of the saddest things was that even though there were multiple witnesses who said that they had seen Lorena covered in bruises, and also witnesses saying that John had abused her, virtually nobody cared. In fact, the media latched on to one interview where she said that John was a selfish lover who had never given her an orgasm, and the court of public opinion just decided that the reason why this had happened is that Lorena was really angry, feisty Latina, and that John was a bad lay. John had his own ideas, and he made some public appearances and said that it was because her green card was expiring soon, and she could only be a citizen if they had been married for 5 years, and they had only been married for 4 when he decided to leave her. In the end, the jury took pity on her and found her not guilty by reason of temporary insanity. She was ordered to spend 5 weeks in a mental facility, and her divorce was finalized from John in 1995. John decided to make the media circus work for him. He moved to Las Vegas. He filmed a couple of adult videos, one called Uncut and another called Frankenpenis. He had several high-profile girlfriends who were all in the industry, who all coincidentally went on to say that he was abusive. He never got quite as famous as he wanted, and very quickly, the 15 minutes were over. John apparently continued to write Lorena love notes well into 2020. Lorena went back to her maiden name and became a normal person. Playboy actually offered her $1 million, but she declined. She went back to college, met her partner, David Bellinger, who she's been with for 25 years. They have a daughter who should be about 18 years old by now. She told USA Today that they're going to get married one day. She runs an organization called Lorena's Red Wagon that helps the victims of domestic violence. When the Me Too movement came up, she actually ended up having the opportunity to talk about why she had taken such drastic measures to get out of an abusive relationship. Lorena would go on to say the media was focusing on the penis, the sensationalism, the scandalous, but I wanted to shine a light on the issue of spousal abuse.